My name is David Palmer, and until 6 months ago, I thought I knew exactly who I was and what my life looked like. I was the guy who left for work every morning at 7:30 sharp, kissed my wife Rebecca goodbye, and reminded our kids Emma, 14, and Tyler, 11, to listen to their mother and do their homework. I was the husband who brought flowers home on Fridays, who planned anniversary trips, and who genuinely believed that after 15 years of marriage, Rebecca and I had figured out how to make it work. I should have known something was wrong when she started working late 3 nights a week. Rebecca owned her interior design business, Palmer Interiors, which she'd built from nothing into something genuinely successful. She had a small office in Buckhead and employed 2 junior designers. For years, her schedule had been predictable: client meetings during the day, design work in the evenings at home, weekend site visits when necessary. She was disciplined, organized, and rarely deviated from her routine. So when she started staying at the office until 9 or 10 at night, claiming she'd landed a big commercial contract that required evening work, I was actually proud of her. The contract, she explained, was for a luxury hotel chain renovating 3 properties in the Atlanta area. It was the kind of work that could take her business to the next level. The project managers can only meet after their regular business hours, she told me one Tuesday evening in March, gathering her purse and laptop bag. I know it's inconvenient, but this contract could set us up for the next 5 years. I kissed her cheek and told her I'd handle dinner and homework duty. Go build our empire, I said, meaning every word. The late nights stretched from March into April, then May. Rebecca would come home looking tired but energized, talking about color schemes and furniture sourcing challenges. She showed me photos of hotel lobbies and conference rooms, explained the complexities of working with corporate decision-makers. Everything seemed legitimate, even if I missed having her around in the evenings. It was Tyler who first planted the seed of doubt, though he had no idea what he was doing. Mom's car wasn't at her office yesterday, he mentioned casually one Saturday morning while we were making pancakes. Rebecca was still sleeping. She'd started sleeping in on weekends, claiming the hotel project was exhausting her. I paused in the middle of flipping a pancake. What do you mean? When we drove past to go to GameStop, remember? You said we should wave at Mom's building, but her car wasn't in the parking lot. I tried to remember. We'd gone to the mall on Friday evening while Rebecca was supposedly working late. I had jokingly suggested we swing by her office to say hi, but Tyler had wanted to get to the store before it closed, so we'd just driven past. Maybe she was out meeting with clients, I said, but something cold had settled in my stomach. On Friday night? Tyler shrugged and went back to mixing batter. Weird time for a meeting. I told myself it meant nothing. There were dozens of explanations. She could have been at a job site, or meeting clients at their location, or even just running errands. But the seed was planted, and over the next few weeks I found myself paying closer attention to small details I'd previously ignored. Like how she'd started putting her phone face down during dinner, when she'd never done that before. Or how she'd begun taking showers immediately when she got home from her late meetings, claiming the hotel sites were dusty and made her feel grimy. Or how she'd stopped talking about the specific details of her work, giving vague responses when I asked how the project was progressing. The real wake-up call came on a Thursday evening in late May. Rebecca had left for another late meeting, and I was helping Emma with a history project about the Civil War. My laptop was acting up, so I grabbed Rebecca's iPad from the kitchen counter to look up information about the Battle of Atlanta. When I opened the browser, it automatically loaded the last page she'd been viewing. It wasn't anything related to interior design or hotel renovations. It was a restaurant review for a place called Chez Laurent, an expensive French restaurant in Midtown. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. It was the date on the browser history. Yesterday, Wednesday evening, when she was supposed to be working late at the office. I stared at the screen for a long moment, trying to come up with an innocent explanation. Maybe she was researching restaurants for a client event. Maybe she was planning a surprise for our anniversary, which was still 2 months away. Maybe it meant absolutely nothing. But my hands were shaking as I clicked through more of the browser history. What I found there changed everything. The browser history revealed more than just dinner at Chez Laurent. Much more. I sat in Emma's room, the glow from Rebecca's iPad casting shadows across my face as I scrolled through weeks of digital breadcrumbs. Each entry felt like a small betrayal, building towards something I wasn't sure I wanted to understand completely. Tuesday, October 15th. Nordstrom.com, search for cocktail dresses. Amazon, overnight shipping for silk lingerie. Wednesday, open table reservation at the Capitol Grill for 2 at 8 p.m. Thursday, Sephora, long-lasting lipstick, and waterproof mascara. The pattern emerged with clinical precision. Every week that Rebecca claimed to be working late on the hotel project, she'd spent the afternoon shopping for clothes I'd never seen her wear, making dinner reservations at restaurants we'd never visited together, researching things that had nothing to do with interior design. My hands remained steady as I screenshotted each page, methodically building a digital file that would have made my project management colleagues proud. Years of organizing complex software deployments had trained me well for this kind of systematic documentation. "Dad?" Emma's voice from the doorway made me look up. "Is everything okay? You look weird." I closed the iPad and managed what I hoped passed for a normal smile. "Just checking something for work. Your mom's device was closer than mine." She studied my face with the unsettling perceptiveness that 14-year-old girls seem to develop overnight. "Are you and Mom fighting about something?" "No, sweetheart. Why would you ask that?" "I don't know. She's been acting strange lately. Like, really happy but also nervous. And she bought new perfume last week. The expensive kind from that store at Lenox Square." Another piece clicked into place. Rebecca had indeed smelled different recently. Not the light floral scent she'd worn for years, but something heavier, more sophisticated. Something chosen for someone else's preferences. "People change their routines sometimes," I said carefully. "It doesn't necessarily mean anything's wrong." Emma shrugged, but her expression suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. "Tyler thinks Mom has a boyfriend." The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been moving toward the same conclusion myself. Hearing it from our 11-year-old son, stated with the casual directness that children use for uncomfortable truths, made it somehow more real. "Tyler has an active imagination," I managed. "Maybe, but he's usually right about stuff like this. Remember when he figured out that Mrs. Patterson next door was getting divorced before she even told anyone? He just noticed her husband's car wasn't there anymore." I remembered. Tyler had always been observant, picking up on details that adults missed or chose to ignore. If he'd concluded that Rebecca was seeing someone else, he'd probably noticed things I hadn't even considered yet. "What exactly did Tyler say?" Emma glanced toward the hallway, then lowered her voice. "He said Mom's been doing her hair differently on the nights she works late. And she's been listening to different music in the car, like romantic stuff instead of her usual podcasts. Plus, she bought those new clothes, but she never wears them when she's home with us." Each observation felt like another small cut. Rebecca had been living a parallel life right in front of us, and our children had been more aware of it than I'd been. The realization stung more than the actual betrayal. That I'd been so trusting, so oblivious, that my own kids had picked up on signs I'd completely missed. "Has she said anything to you about work being different lately?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "Not really. But remember last week when she came home and said the hotel people wanted to change all the color schemes? Tyler asked her what colors they picked instead, and she got this weird look and said she couldn't remember exactly. Like, how do you forget something that important if it just happened?" I didn't have an answer for that, at least not one I could share with Emma. But the lie about the color schemes added another layer to Rebecca's deception. She wasn't just hiding where she went during those evening hours. She was actively constructing false narratives about fictional work problems to explain her distraction and mood changes. "Dad, Are you sure everything's okay? You're making that face you get when something's wrong with a project at work. I forced myself to relax my expression. Emma was right. I could feel the tension in my jaw, the same focused intensity I brought to solving complex technical problems. Except this wasn't a software glitch or a missed deadline. This was my marriage falling apart in real time. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired. Why don't you finish your homework? I'll check on Tyler and then start dinner. She nodded but lingered in the doorway. Dad, if something was wrong, you'd tell us, right? I mean, not immediately, but eventually. The question caught me off guard. Emma was asking for reassurance, but she was also demonstrating a maturity that made me realize both kids were more aware of the family dynamics than Rebecca and I had given them credit for. They'd been watching, listening, picking up on subtle changes in behavior and routine. If there was something you needed to know, yes, I'd tell you. But right now, there's nothing to worry about. It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely false either. There was definitely something to worry about, but Emma didn't need to carry that burden. Not yet. After she returned to her desk, I sat in the hallway for a moment, trying to process what I'd learned. The browser history painted a clear picture of someone preparing for romantic encounters, the kind of careful attention to appearance and ambiance that Rebecca used to reserve for our anniversary dinners or special occasions. But there was something else bothering me. Something beyond the obvious implications of the dinner reservations and lingerie purchases. The timing was too convenient, too sudden. Rebecca's interior design business had been steady but not spectacular for years. The sudden appearance of a major hotel contract that required evening meetings 3 nights a week felt like an elaborate cover story designed to provide regular opportunities for whatever she was actually doing. I needed more information, but I also needed to be careful. If Rebecca suspected I was investigating her activities, she'd become more cautious, making it harder to understand the full scope of what was happening. And despite the growing evidence, part of me still hoped there might be an innocent explanation. Some complex business situation or family issue she hadn't felt ready to discuss. But as I walked toward Tyler's room, I couldn't shake Emma's words about her mother's new perfume and different music choices. Those weren't the actions of someone dealing with a difficult client or managing a stressful project. Those were the actions of someone preparing to be attractive to another person. The house felt different now, as if the familiar spaces had been rearranged while I wasn't looking. Everything appeared the same on the surface, but underneath the foundation had shifted in ways I was only beginning to understand. The organ donor. What starts as a routine medical procedure becomes the catalyst for uncovering a web of deception that will tear apart everything I thought I knew about my marriage. When my wife needed a kidney transplant, I never hesitated to be tested as a donor. I thought I was saving her life. Instead, I discovered she'd been living a completely different one. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Rebecca had already left for what she claimed was an early client meeting, kissing me goodbye with the same practiced affection she'd shown for months. The house felt different in her absence, quieter, but somehow more honest. I started with her home office. Rebecca kept meticulous records for her design business, something I'd always admired about her professional approach. Color-coded filing systems, detailed project binders, invoices sorted by date. If the Buckhead Grand Hotel renovation was real, there would be documentation somewhere. The first filing cabinet yielded nothing unusual. Client contracts, vendor agreements, payment schedules, all legitimate work from the past year. But as I searched deeper, patterns emerged that made my stomach tighten. March through May showed a significant gap in new client acquisitions. The hotel project should have been her biggest contract to date, yet there was no paperwork, no initial design concepts, no material orders. Instead, I found credit card statements she'd been handling personally, charges at restaurants I'd never heard of, boutiques in parts of Atlanta we rarely visited, a jewelry store in Buckhead that specialized in men's accessories. My hands shook as I photographed each statement with my phone. The second filing cabinet held her personal documents, tax returns, insurance papers, medical records. I almost closed the drawer when something caught my eye. A manila folder labeled Medical MISC, tucked behind her life insurance policy. Inside were test results from her annual physical in February. Blood work, mammogram, routine screenings. All normal. But clipped to the back was something that made me sit down hard in her desk chair. A consultation summary from Dr. Patricia Williams, nephrologist. The date was January 15th, nearly 2 months before she'd told me about the kidney problems. I read the summary 3 times before the words fully registered. Rebecca had been experiencing fatigue and occasional back pain, symptoms she'd attributed to stress from work. The initial blood tests showed elevated creatinine levels, suggesting possible kidney dysfunction. Dr. Williams had recommended additional testing and a follow-up appointment. But according to the next document in the file, Rebecca had canceled that follow-up appointment. Twice. The final paper in the folder was a printout of an email exchange between Rebecca and Dr. Williams' office, dated March 3rd. The same week she'd supposedly received her devastating diagnosis. The medical assistant was asking Rebecca to reschedule her canceled appointments, noting that her January blood work required immediate follow-up. Rebecca's response was brief. "Thank you for your concern. I've decided to pursue treatment elsewhere." I stared at the email until the words blurred. There was no elsewhere. There was no kidney specialist named Dr. Anderson. There was no dialysis schedule, no transplant waiting list, no medical crisis at all. My wife had fabricated her entire illness. The realization hit me like a physical blow. For months, I'd been consumed with worry about losing her, researching kidney disease, preparing myself mentally for the possibility of being her donor. I'd rearranged my work schedule, taken on extra responsibilities at home, treated her with the careful tenderness reserved for someone fighting for their life. And it was all a lie. But why? What could possibly motivate someone to fake a life-threatening illness? The answer came to me with horrible clarity. The late nights, the mysterious schedule changes, the emotional distance. Rebecca hadn't been dealing with a medical crisis. She'd been having an affair. The kidney disease was her cover story, a way to explain her distraction, her absences, her need for space and understanding. I thought about all the times I'd encouraged her to rest instead of pushing for intimacy. How I'd taken over more household duties to reduce her stress. How I'd been the perfect supportive husband to a woman who was betraying me in the most calculated way possible. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Running late today. Don't wait up for dinner. Love you." Love you. The casual cruelty of those words after what I'd just discovered made me want to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I took a photo of every document in the medical folder, then carefully replaced everything exactly as I'd found it. Rebecca's organizational system would make it obvious if anything was disturbed, and I wasn't ready for that confrontation yet. I needed more information. I needed to understand the full scope of her deception. The rest of the day passed in a strange, detached haze. I went through the motions of normal life. Grocery shopping, picking up Tyler from soccer practice, helping Emma with her algebra homework. But underneath the routine activities, my mind was racing, cataloging every lie, every manipulation, every moment when I should have seen through her performance. When the kids asked where Mom was, I heard myself repeating her excuses about work meetings and client deadlines. The words felt foreign in my mouth, like I was speaking a language I'd never learned. That evening, after Emma and Tyler had gone to bed, I sat in my home office and opened a new document on my computer. I titled it Documentation and began typing everything I discovered, organizing the information chronologically. The browser history, the children's observations, the medical records, the financial statements. It all painted a picture of systematic deception that went back months, possibly longer. As I worked, I found myself thinking about the kidney donation process I'd researched so thoroughly. The extensive medical testing, the psychological evaluations, the careful matching of donor and recipient. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been prepared to give Rebecca a part of myself to save her life, while she'd been busy dismantling our marriage piece by piece. Around midnight, I heard her car in the driveway. I quickly saved my document and closed the laptop, then pretended to be reading a technical manual for work. When she came upstairs, she looked tired, but not in the way someone battling kidney disease should look tired. Her makeup was fresh, her hair perfectly styled, her clothes unwrinkled despite her supposed 12-hour workday. "How are you feeling?" I asked, the question loaded with new meaning. "Better today," she said, settling into bed beside me. "Dr. Anderson thinks the new medication is helping." Dr. Anderson, who didn't exist. Medication for a disease she didn't have. I wanted to confront her right then, to demand the truth, to end the charade that was poisoning every interaction we had. But something held me back. Maybe caution, maybe the need to fully understand what I was dealing with before I acted. "That's good news," I said instead. "I'm glad you're getting better." She smiled and kissed my cheek, and I wondered how many lies could fit into such a simple gesture. As she settled into sleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling and planned my next steps. I needed to find out who she was really spending her time with. I needed to understand how long this had been going on. Most importantly, I needed to protect Emma and Tyler from the fallout that was coming. Because one thing was certain, this couldn't continue. The elaborate fiction Rebecca had constructed was going to collapse, and when it did, I intended to be ready. The morning after my discovery about Rebecca's fabricated kidney disease, I sat in my home office staring at the medical records spread across my desk like evidence in a crime scene. The house felt different now. Every familiar sound carried new weight. Every shadow seemed to hide another deception. I'd barely slept, my mind cycling through the implications of what I'd uncovered. Rebecca wasn't just having an affair. She'd constructed an elaborate medical fiction that had consumed months of our lives. I heard her moving around upstairs, getting ready for another day of whatever she actually did when she claimed to be working late. The sound of her shower running made my stomach clench. How many times had I massaged her shoulders after those supposed long days at the office, believing she was pushing herself too hard while battling a serious illness? My phone buzzed with a text from my brother Jake. "How's Rebecca feeling? Mom wanted to send her some of those herbal teas she swears by." The irony hit me like a physical blow. Our entire extended family had been drawn into this web of lies, offering support and prayers for a condition that existed only in Rebecca's imagination. I needed more information before I could even begin to process how to handle this situation. The credit card statements had revealed the restaurants and jewelry purchases, but I needed to understand the full scope of her deception. If she could fabricate an entire medical crisis, what else might she be lying about? I pulled up our joint checking account on my laptop and began scrolling through months of transactions with new eyes. There, a charge for $89 at something called Wellness Day Spa on the same day she'd supposedly had blood work done. Another charge for $156 at a boutique in Buckhead during what should have been a dialysis appointment. The pattern became clearer as I worked backward through the statements. The garage door rumbled open below. Rebecca was leaving for work, or wherever she actually went. I waited until I heard her car pull out of the driveway before moving to the window. She turned right instead of left, away from the route to her office. Even this small detail felt significant now. I called my office and told them I needed a personal day, something I rarely did. My assistant Jennifer sounded concerned when I mentioned a family situation. "Take all the time you need, David. The Morrison Project can wait another day." I almost laughed at the normalcy of her response. The Morrison Project. My biggest professional challenge of the year suddenly seemed trivial compared to discovering that my marriage was built on systematic deception. With the house empty except for me, I decided to search Rebecca's home office more thoroughly. I'd always respected her privacy, trusting that our separate workspaces gave us both room to be productive. Now I wondered what else that privacy had concealed. Her desk drawers revealed the usual collection of business cards, receipts, and office supplies, but tucked behind a stack of interior design magazines, I found a small appointment book that wasn't her main calendar. The entries were sparse but telling. Lunch, RC, appeared frequently, always on days when she'd claimed to have medical appointments. Dinner, RC, showed up on several of her supposed late work nights. RC. At least now I had initials. I photographed each relevant page with my phone, my hands surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. The handwriting was definitely Rebecca's, the same careful script she used for birthday cards and grocery lists. A folder labeled Hotel Project Confidential caught my attention. Inside, I expected to find plans and contracts for the renovation work she'd been using as cover for her late nights. Instead, I found printouts of weekend getaway packages at luxury resorts, none of which we'd ever visited together. The Chonk to O'Forlan in North Georgia, the Ritz-Carlton at Reynolds Plantation. Each printout was dated within the last 3 months. My chest tightened as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about stolen evenings or fabricated medical appointments. Rebecca had been planning entire romantic weekends with someone else while I researched kidney donation procedures and rearranged my work schedule to accommodate her fake treatments. The sound of the front door slamming made me freeze. Rebecca shouldn't be back for hours. I quickly closed the folder and moved toward the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Dad?" Tyler's voice called out. "I forgot my science project." Relief flooded through me as I heard his footsteps on the stairs. "Up here, buddy. Everything okay?" He appeared in the doorway of Rebecca's office, his backpack slung over one shoulder. "Yeah, just grabbed my volcano thing. Why are you in Mom's office?" The question was innocent enough, but it highlighted how unusual my presence here was. "Just looking for some papers," I said, which was technically true. "Shouldn't you be in school?" "Late start day, remember? We don't go in until 10. He studied my face with the perceptive eyes that had first noticed his mother's car wasn't where it should be. "Dad, are you okay? You look weird." Kids have an uncanny ability to sense when something's wrong, even when adults think they're hiding it well. Tyler had been the first to notice Rebecca's behavioral changes, and now he was picking up on mine. "Just tired," I said. "Didn't sleep well last night." He nodded but didn't look convinced. "Mom's been acting strange lately, too. Emma thinks she's stressed about work, but I don't know. She seems different." The urge to protect him from what I was discovering warred with my need to understand what he'd observed. "Different how?" Tyler shrugged, the gesture so typical of an 11-year-old trying to articulate something beyond his experience. "She used to always ask about our day and stuff. Now she seems like she's thinking about other things, and she's been really happy about weird stuff, like when she gets text messages. She gets this smile that's, I don't know, not like her normal smile." His words hit me harder than any financial record or appointment book entry. Our children had been watching their mother fall in love with someone else, even if they couldn't understand what they were seeing. "Tyler," I said carefully, "has your mom mentioned anything about being sick? About needing to see doctors?" He frowned, considering the question. "Not really. I mean, she said something about getting some tests done, but she didn't seem worried about it. Usually when people are sick, they act sick, right? Mom's been more energetic lately. Like, really energetic." Energetic. The word choice was perfect. Rebecca had been energized by her secret relationship, glowing with the excitement of new romance while telling me she might need a kidney transplant. "Dad, Is something wrong with Mom? Tyler's question was direct, and I could see real concern in his eyes. I couldn't lie to him, but I also couldn't burden him with the truth I was still trying to process myself. I think Mom's going through some stuff right now, I said. But whatever happens, Emma and you are the most important thing to me and to her. That won't change. He nodded solemnly, accepting my non-answer with the resilience that kids somehow manage. Okay, I should get to school. After Tyler left, I stood in Rebecca's office feeling the weight of what I'd discovered pressing down on me. The fake medical crisis, the secret appointments, the romantic getaways, each piece of evidence painted a picture of betrayal so calculated it took my breath away. But what haunted me most was Tyler's observation about Rebecca's happiness. While I'd been researching organ donation and preparing to give her part of my body to save her life, she'd been glowing with the joy of her affair. I needed to know who RC was, and I needed to understand the full extent of what Rebecca had been doing. But first, I had to figure out how to get through the rest of this day, knowing that when she came home tonight, she'd probably lie to my face about where she'd been and what she'd done. The foundation of our life together hadn't just cracked. It had been systematically demolished from within, and I was only now seeing the rubble. The weight of everything I'd discovered settled over me like a suffocating blanket. I sat in my home office, surrounded by the evidence of Rebecca's deception, feeling like a stranger in my own life. The appointment book lay open on my desk, those neat entries mocking 15 years of what I'd believed was a solid marriage. RC, lunch, 12:30. RC, weekend planning. Each notation felt like a small knife twist. I needed to know who RC was. The rational part of my mind insisted on complete information before making any decisions. But another part of me, the part that had loved and trusted Rebecca completely, wanted to close the book, pretend I'd never seen any of this, and go back to the comfortable illusion of our life together. That wasn't an option anymore. I opened Rebecca's laptop again, this time focusing on her email. Most of her accounts had saved passwords, a convenience that now worked against her. Her primary Gmail account showed the usual mix of client communications, family scheduling, and promotional emails. But buried in a subfolder labeled Design Inspiration were emails that had nothing to do with interior design. The first one I opened made my stomach drop. Rebecca. Can't wait for this weekend. The cabin reservation is confirmed. 2 nights, just us. R. The timestamp showed it was sent 3 weeks ago. I scrolled down to see Rebecca's reply. Perfect. I told David I have a client presentation in Birmingham. The kidney treatment story's getting old anyway. See you Friday. R. My hands trembled as I read it again. The casual way she discussed lying to me, the dismissive reference to her fabricated illness. It was like reading about strangers, except one of them was my wife. I found more emails, a trail of correspondence stretching back 6 months. RC was Richard Coleman, apparently a contractor she'd met on a previous project. The early emails were professional, discussing tile selections and fixture installations. But somewhere around February, the tone shifted. Compliments about her design sense became compliments about her appearance. Discussions about project timelines became suggestions for lunch meetings. By March, they weren't even pretending it was about work. Richard. What we talked about today changes everything. I haven't felt this way in years, but I need time to figure things out. Rebecca. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. You deserve to be happy. Ari. I wanted to stop reading, but I couldn't. Each email was another piece of the puzzle, showing me exactly how my marriage had crumbled while I'd been completely oblivious. Rebecca had crafted an entire alternate reality, complete with fake medical appointments that were actually romantic rendezvous with Richard Coleman. The worst part was how methodical it all was. She'd researched kidney disease symptoms, created a fake patient portal account, even printed out fabricated test results. The level of planning required was staggering. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or a marriage that had slowly drifted apart. This was calculated deception on a scale I could barely comprehend. I found Richard's business website easily enough. Coleman Construction, specializing in high-end residential renovations. His photo showed a man about my age, maybe a few years younger, with the kind of rugged good looks that probably appealed to clients looking to renovate their kitchens and their lives simultaneously. His testimonials page featured glowing reviews from satisfied customers, several of whom mentioned his professionalism and attention to detail. I wondered how many of those satisfied customers had become more than clients. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Running late tonight. Client meeting went long. Don't wait up." I stared at the message, knowing now that there was no client meeting. She was probably with Richard, maybe planning their next getaway or simply enjoying the thrill of their secret relationship. I typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on a simple, "Okay." The house felt different now, like a stage set rather than a home. Everything I looked at, the furniture Rebecca had chosen, the artwork she'd hung, the color schemes she'd insisted would make us happy, seemed fake. Had she been thinking about Richard when she picked out our new dining room table? Was she comparing our bedroom to wherever she met him? Emma appeared in my office doorway, startling me out of my spiraling thoughts. "Dad, you okay? You look weird." I quickly closed the laptop. "Just work stuff, sweetheart. Stressful project." She studied my face with the uncomfortable perceptiveness that 14-year-olds sometimes possess. "Is Mom sick again? She's been acting really strange lately." "What do you mean, strange?" Emma shrugged. "I don't know. Happy, but like fake happy. And she keeps checking her phone and smiling at it. Tyler thinks she has a boyfriend." The words hit me like a physical blow. If the kids were picking up on Rebecca's behavior, how long before they figured out what was really happening? How long before this whole carefully constructed lie collapsed and took our family down with it? "Tyler's got an active imagination," I managed. "Mom's just excited about a big project." "Maybe." Emma didn't sound convinced. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "If something bad happened, like really bad, you'd tell us, right? You wouldn't just pretend everything was fine?" The irony of her question was almost unbearable. Here I was, doing exactly what she was asking me not to do, pretending everything was fine while my world fell apart around me. "Emma, is there something specific you're worried about?" "Not really, it's just things feel different lately. Like everyone's acting, but nobody's saying their real lines. Out of the mouths of babes." My 14-year-old daughter had articulated what I'd been feeling but couldn't express. We were all actors now, playing roles in a family drama where only Rebecca knew the real script. "If something important happens, something that affects our family, I promise you'll know about it. But right now, everything's okay." Emma nodded, but I could see she wasn't entirely satisfied with my answer. She lingered in the doorway for a moment longer, then headed back to her room. I sat alone in my office, surrounded by the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and realized I was at a crossroads. I could confront Rebecca immediately, demand explanations, and probably trigger a messy explosion that would devastate the kids. I could try to salvage the marriage, pretend I'd never discovered any of this, and hope it was just a phase that would pass. Or I could continue gathering information, document everything, and prepare for whatever came next. The project manager in me knew the third option made the most sense. I needed all the facts before making any major decisions. But the husband in me wanted to storm into our bedroom and demand to know how she could do this to us. Instead, I opened a new document on my computer and began creating a timeline. February 15th. First personal email from Richard Coleman. March 3rd. Rebecca's first fake kidney appointment. March 20th. Weekend getaway to Asheville while I thought she was having dialysis. Each entry was another nail in the coffin of our marriage, but I kept typing. If this was going to end, I needed to understand exactly how we'd gotten here. And more importantly, I needed to protect Emma and Tyler from as much of the fallout as possible. The sound of Rebecca's car in the driveway interrupted my work. I quickly saved the document and closed my laptop, then walked to the kitchen to maintain the illusion of normalcy. She came through the door looking radiant, her cheeks flushed and her eyes bright. For a moment, I could almost forget what I knew and just see the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. "How was your meeting?" I asked, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Productive," she said, kissing my cheek. "Very productive. I think this project is going to be something special." I wondered if she was talking about the fictional client meeting or her relationship with Richard Coleman. With Rebecca, it was impossible to tell anymore. The weight of everything I discovered pressed down on me as I sat in my car outside Emma's school, watching the stream of teenagers pour through the front doors. My daughter emerged with her usual group of friends, backpack slung over one shoulder, laughing at something one of them had said. For a moment, seeing her carefree smile, I could almost pretend that my world hadn't completely shifted on its axis in the past week. Emma spotted me and waved goodbye to her friends before jogging over to the car. "Hey, Dad. You're early today." "Finished up a meeting sooner than expected," I said, which was technically true. I'd wrapped up my project review in record time, my mind too fractured to focus on quarterly deliverables and resource allocation. "How was your day?" She buckled her seatbelt and launched into a detailed account of some drama involving her English teacher and a disputed grade on a poetry assignment. I found myself grateful for the normalcy of it, the way teenage concerns could momentarily eclipse the adult catastrophe brewing at home. As we drove toward Tyler's elementary school, Emma's chatter provided a buffer against the churning thoughts that had consumed me for days. "Mom's been in such a good mood lately," Emma said, seemingly out of nowhere. "Even when she's stressed about work stuff, she's like, I don't know, different. Happier, I guess." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Different how?" "She hums a lot now, and she bought new perfume last week. Something fancy from that department store in Buckhead." Emma paused, studying her phone. She used to complain all the time about how tired she was, but now she's got all this energy. Maybe the kidney thing isn't as bad as she thought? I managed to keep my voice level. Maybe. Tyler was waiting by the flagpole when we pulled up, his backpack dragging behind him as he trudged toward the car with the particular exhaustion that only fourth graders seem to master. He climbed into the back seat and immediately started complaining about having to stay after school for math help. "Mrs. Patterson says I need to practice my multiplication tables more," he grumbled. "But I already know most of them." "Practice makes perfect," I said automatically, the kind of parental response that came without thinking. But as the words left my mouth, I realized how hollow they sounded. Practice makes perfect. Like Rebecca had been practicing her deception, perfecting her lies, until they became second nature. "Dad, can we get ice cream?" Tyler asked as we passed the Dairy Queen near our neighborhood. "It's almost dinner time," Emma protested. "Mom will kill us if we spoil our appetite." "Mom won't be home until late anyway," Tyler said. "She's got that doctor appointment, remember?" My stomach dropped. Another appointment with the fictional Dr. Anderson. Another evening she'd spend with Richard Coleman while I helped the kids with homework and pretended everything was normal. "Actually," I heard myself saying, "ice cream sounds good. We'll make it a small one." Both kids cheered, and I pulled into the parking lot, needing a few extra minutes before facing our empty house. As Tyler debated between chocolate chip cookie dough and Rocky Road, I watched families at nearby tables, parents and children sharing sundaes, couples splitting banana splits, teenagers on what looked like first dates. All of them existing in a world where trust wasn't a luxury, where the foundation of their relationships hadn't been systematically undermined by months of calculated lies. "You okay, Dad?" Emma asked, studying my face with the particular intensity that reminded me she was growing up, becoming more observant. "You seem kind of off lately." Just work stress, I said, forcing a smile. Nothing for you to worry about. But as we drove home with our ice cream, Tyler chattering about his upcoming science fair project, and Emma texting friends about weekend plans, I realized that my children had already been living with the effects of Rebecca's deception for months. They'd adapted to her absences, her mood changes, her elaborate scheduling around fictional medical appointments. They'd been navigating a reality built on lies without even knowing it. The house felt different when we walked through the front door. Not physically. Rebecca's decorative touches were still everywhere, her professional eye evident in every carefully chosen color scheme and furniture arrangement. But knowing what I knew now, even the familiar spaces felt contaminated by deception. The kitchen island where she'd sat making fake appointment calls. The home office where she'd researched symptoms of kidney disease to make her lies more convincing. The bedroom where she'd changed into clothes meant for another man. I'm going to start dinner, I announced, needing something concrete to focus on. Mom left money for pizza, Tyler said, producing a $20 bill from his backpack. She said she might be really late tonight. Of course she had. Another evening with Richard Coleman, another night of playing the devoted wife battling a serious illness while actually sharing intimate dinners in hotel rooms with her contractor. The casual way Tyler delivered the message, like it was just another normal part of our routine, made my chest tighten. Pizza sounds good, I managed. While we waited for delivery, I helped Tyler with his math homework at the kitchen table, walking him through multiplication problems that seemed absurdly simple compared to the complex equation of lies I was trying to solve in my own life. Emma sprawled on the living room couch, supposedly reading for English class, but mostly scrolling through social media. Dad, Tyler said, looking up from his worksheet, is Mom going to be okay with her kidney thing? The question hit me like a physical blow. My 11-year-old son, worried about his mother's fabricated illness, asking for reassurance I couldn't give without perpetuating the lie or revealing the truth. The doctors are taking good care of her, I said carefully. She's getting the help she needs. It wasn't technically a lie, though the help Rebecca was getting had nothing to do with kidney disease and everything to do with her affair with Richard Coleman. But Tyler nodded, satisfied with my non-answer, and returned to his multiplication tables. The pizza arrived just as Emma was setting the table, and for a while we maintained the illusion of normalcy. Tyler told jokes he'd learned at school, Emma complained about her upcoming history test, and I made appropriate parental responses while my mind churned through the evidence I'd accumulated and what I was going to do with it. By 8 o'clock, both kids were settled with homework, and I found myself alone in the kitchen, staring at Rebecca's appointment calendar still open on the counter. Tomorrow's entry read, Dr. Anderson, 2:30 p.m., follow-up. Another fake appointment, another afternoon she'd spend with Richard Coleman while I sat in meetings discussing project timelines and budget allocations. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Running later than expected. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you. 2 words that had once provided comfort and security, now feeling like just another layer of deception. How many times had she sent similar messages while sitting across from Richard Coleman at some romantic restaurant, planning their next getaway? I found myself walking through our house, really looking at it for the first time in months. Rebecca's design work was everywhere. The carefully coordinated throw pillows, the strategically placed artwork, the lighting that created just the right ambiance. She'd built our home into something beautiful and welcoming, a reflection of her professional skills and personal taste. But underneath all that aesthetic perfection lay months of systematic lying, a foundation of deception that made everything else feel hollow. In our bedroom, I opened Rebecca's jewelry box, something I'd never done before. Among her rings and necklaces, I found a small velvet pouch I didn't recognize. Inside were a pair of diamond earrings I'd never seen her wear, expensive-looking pieces that definitely weren't from me. A gift from Richard Coleman, most likely. Another piece of evidence in the growing collection of my wife's betrayal. The jewelry box sat open on my desk like an accusation. 3 pieces I'd never seen Rebecca wear. Diamond earrings that caught the lamplight, a tennis bracelet that probably cost more than my monthly salary, and a pendant necklace with a stone I couldn't identify but knew was expensive. Each piece nestled in its own velvet compartment, pristine and untouched by the life we shared. I photographed everything, then returned the box to its hiding place behind her winter sweaters. My hands moved with mechanical precision, but my mind raced through calculations. When had she received these gifts? The earrings looked new, barely worn. The bracelet showed slight scratches on the clasp. She'd worn that one more than once. But where? Certainly not to any family dinner or school function I could remember. The house felt different now, like I was seeing it through new eyes. Every corner held potential secrets. Every drawer might contain more evidence of the woman I thought I knew, but clearly didn't. I found myself studying our family photos on the mantle, searching Rebecca's face for signs of deception I'd missed. In last Christmas's picture, she wore that radiant smile I'd attributed to holiday joy. Now I wondered if it had more to do with her secret relationship. Tyler wandered into the living room, still in his pajamas despite it being nearly noon on Saturday. "Dad, can we go to the batting cages today?" "Sure, buddy." I needed the normalcy, the simple pleasure of watching my son connect with a baseball. "Let me check with your mom about her plans." I found Rebecca in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone with that familiar secretive posture, screen angled away, thumb ready to switch apps if anyone approached. She looked up with practiced casualness. "The batting cages sound great," she said. "I'll stay here and catch up on some work. Client wants revisions on the Henderson project." She paused, and I caught the slight hesitation. "Might take most of the afternoon." Another lie, delivered as smoothly as asking about the weather. I wondered if she even remembered which lies she'd told anymore, or if deception had become so natural she didn't distinguish between truth and fiction. "No problem. Tyler and I could use some guy time." At the batting cages, I watched my son's form improve with each swing. His concentration reminded me of myself at that age, methodical, determined to get things right. Between rounds, he peppered me with questions about baseball statistics and whether I thought he'd make the middle school team next year. "You've got the discipline for it," I told him. "That's half the battle." "Mom says I get that from you. The organized stuff." The irony wasn't lost on me. Rebecca had always teased me about my methodical nature, my need to plan and document everything. She'd called it endearing, even attractive. Now I realized it was probably what made me such an easy target for her elaborate deceptions. She knew I'd trust her explanations, file them away in my mental catalog of accepted facts, and never question them again. On the drive home, Tyler grew quiet, staring out the passenger window. "Dad, is Mom sick?" The question hit me like ice water. "What makes you ask that?" "She's been different lately. Like, she goes to the doctor a lot, and sometimes she looks really tired. Emma thinks she's hiding something from us." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My children had noticed what I'd been too trusting to see. They'd observed their mother's behavior with the clarity that comes from innocence. No adult assumptions about marriage or loyalty to cloud their judgment. "Your mom's dealing with some health issues," I said carefully, "but she's getting good medical care." It was technically true, even if the medical care was fictional and the health issues were manufactured. I couldn't bring myself to lie outright to Tyler, but I also couldn't burden him with the truth. Not yet. That evening, Rebecca announced she needed to visit her sister in Birmingham the following weekend. "Jennifer's going through a rough patch with the divorce," she explained, not meeting my eyes. "She needs emotional support." I nodded sympathetically while mentally noting that Rebecca had never mentioned her sister having marital problems. Jennifer had seemed perfectly happy at Thanksgiving, laughing with her husband about their vacation plans. But then again, I was learning that Rebecca's version of events rarely aligned with reality. "Of course, the kids and I can handle things here." "You're the best." She kissed my cheek, and I caught a whiff of that new perfume again. I'll probably leave Friday after work and come back Sunday evening. Another weekend getaway with Richard Coleman, I realized. Another elaborate lie wrapped in family concern. I wondered how many of Rebecca's previous trips had been fictional: visits to college friends, work conferences, shopping weekends with her mother. How long had I been living with a stranger who wore my wife's face? After Rebecca went upstairs, I sat in my study and opened a new document on my computer. Time to organize what I knew, create a timeline that made sense of the chaos. My project management training kicked in automatically. Identify the scope, establish deliverables, create a work breakdown structure. The scope was clear: document Rebecca's deception and determine my next steps. The deliverables were evidence, truth, and eventually, a decision about our marriage. The work breakdown structure would track every lie, every inconsistency, every moment when my wife had chosen deception over honesty. I started with the kidney disease fabrication, typing out dates and details with mechanical precision. The fake appointments, the manufactured symptoms, the emotional manipulation around organ donation. Then I added the affair evidence, the restaurant reservations, the jewelry, the suspicious travel patterns. As I worked, a pattern emerged that chilled me. Rebecca hadn't just stumbled into deception, she'd architected it. Every lie supported other lies, creating an intricate web designed to keep me confused and compliant. The medical crisis provided cover for the affair, while the affair explained her improved mood and appearance. She'd even used our children as unwitting accomplices, knowing they'd repeat her explanations and reinforce the false narrative. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Package delivered to your office as requested. Hope the information helps. K. I stared at the message, confused. I hadn't ordered anything, hadn't requested any deliveries. Then I remembered Kevin Murphy, the private investigator whose card I'd found online but never contacted. Except apparently, I had contacted him, or someone had, using my name. The implications made my stomach clench. If Rebecca could fake medical appointments and orchestrate elaborate lies, she could certainly send text messages from my phone or use my email account. But why would she hire a private investigator? What could she possibly want to investigate? Unless she suspected that I suspected something. Unless my careful documentation hadn't been as invisible as I'd thought. I checked my sent messages, my email outbox, my browser history. Nothing. But Rebecca was tech-savvy enough to cover digital tracks, especially if she'd had access to my devices. How many times had I left my phone charging in the kitchen while I showered? How often had she used my laptop when hers was upstairs? The house suddenly felt less like a sanctuary and more like a stage where I'd been performing the role of the trusting husband while Rebecca played the devoted wife. Both of us acting, both of us lying, but only one of us aware of the performance. I closed the laptop and walked to the window, looking out at our quiet suburban street. Porch lights glowed warmly, and I could see the blue flicker of televisions through living room windows. Normal families living normal lives, or at least the appearance of normalcy. How many other houses concealed similar deceptions? How many other husbands were documenting their wives' betrayals, or wives were orchestrating elaborate lies? Tomorrow I'd drive to my office and see what package awaited me. Tonight, I'd lie next to Rebecca and listen to her breathe, wondering if she dreamed about Richard Coleman or if her subconscious mind ever felt guilty for the elaborate fiction she'd constructed around our marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was now living my own lie, pretending ignorance while gathering evidence. The difference was that my deception had an endpoint. Eventually, the truth would surface and consequences would follow. Rebecca seemed content to live indefinitely in her manufactured reality, spinning new lies to support old ones, building a house of cards that would eventually collapse under its own weight. I just hoped I'd be ready when it did. The morning after finding Rebecca's hidden jewelry, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. The house felt different now, like a stage set where I'd finally noticed the painted backdrop was starting to peel. Emma had already left for school, but Tyler lingered over his cereal, shooting glances at Rebecca as she moved through her morning routine. "Mom, are you feeling better today?" he asked, his 11-year-old voice carrying a weight that shouldn't have been there. Rebecca paused in her application of lipstick, the same shade I'd seen smeared on Richard Coleman's collar in one of their restaurant photos. "Much better, sweetie. Dr. Anderson says I'm responding well to the new treatment." The lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly I almost admired the craftsmanship. Tyler nodded, but I caught the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Kids notice more than we think they do. "That's great, honey," I said, testing my own voice for cracks. "What time is your appointment today?" 2:30. She didn't even hesitate. "Should run about an hour, then I have that client meeting in Buckhead." I knew there was no appointment. I knew the client meeting was likely another rendezvous with Coleman. But I also knew something Rebecca didn't, that I'd already called her office yesterday and spoken with her assistant, Janet, who'd mentioned Rebecca's unusually light schedule this week. "Drive safe," I told her, and meant it. Whatever else she'd become, she was still the mother of my children. After Tyler caught his bus and Rebecca left in her silver Lexus, I found myself alone with the weight of everything I'd discovered. The rational part of my mind, the project manager who lived for timelines and deliverables, wanted to organize the evidence, create a presentation, schedule a confrontation. But the human part, the part that had loved this woman for 17 years, just wanted to understand how we'd gotten here. My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. "Package update. Additional materials located. Recommend secure retrieval ASAP." I stared at the message until the screen went dark. Someone was helping me, but I couldn't remember asking for help. The gap in my memory bothered me more than I wanted to admit. At work, I went through the motions of reviewing project timelines and attending meetings, but my mind kept drifting to the logistics of Rebecca's deception. She'd been remarkably thorough fake medical appointments that aligned with real business hours, restaurant reservations that coincided with legitimate client meetings in the same neighborhoods. It was the kind of detailed planning that suggested this wasn't her first rodeo. During lunch, I drove to the medical complex where Rebecca claimed Dr. Anderson practiced. The building was real enough, a gleaming tower of glass and steel housing dozens of specialists. But when I checked the directory, there was no Dr. Anderson listed in nephrology. No Dr. Anderson at all. The receptionist at the nephrology practice was helpful in the way that medical staff are trained to be professional but protective of patient privacy. When I explained that my wife had been seeing Dr. Anderson for kidney issues, she gave me a puzzled look. "I'm sorry, but we don't have any Dr. Anderson on staff. We have Dr. Patterson, Dr. Singh, and Dr. Williams. Could you have the name wrong?" I thanked her and left, adding another layer to Rebecca's fabrication. She hadn't just invented appointments, she'd invented an entire doctor. Back at the office, I found myself staring at my computer screen, thinking about the mysterious text messages. On impulse, I opened my email and searched for anything related to private investigators or surveillance services. Nothing in my sent folder, nothing in my inbox. But buried in my deleted items from 3 weeks ago, I found something that made my blood run cold. It was an email I didn't remember sending, addressed to Blackwood Investigations. "Need comprehensive surveillance package. Suspect spouse of infidelity. Discretion essential. Will call to arrange payment and details." The timestamp showed 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday night. I remembered that night. I'd been up late with insomnia, pacing the house while Rebecca slept peacefully beside me. But I had no memory of sending this email. I called Blackwood Investigations from my office phone. A woman with a professional voice answered on the second ring. "Mr. Palmer," she said, before I could introduce myself. "We've been expecting your call. The additional surveillance materials are ready for pickup." "I'm sorry, but I think there might be some confusion. I don't remember—" "Sir, You contacted us 3 weeks ago, requesting comprehensive spousal surveillance. We've been documenting your wife's activities as requested. The initial package was delivered to your home yesterday, with additional materials available for secure pickup. My mouth went dry. What kind of additional materials? Video surveillance, financial records, communication logs, everything you specified in your original request. Would you like to schedule a pickup? Or should we arrange secure delivery? I hung up without answering. The room felt like it was tilting slightly, the way everything shifts when you realize the ground beneath your feet isn't as solid as you thought. Had I contacted them? The email was in my deleted items, sent from my account. But I had no memory of it, no recollection of making that decision. It was like discovering I'd been sleepwalking through my own investigation. My phone rang. Rebecca's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment I considered not answering. But habits die hard, even when the foundation of your marriage is crumbling. "Hey," I said, proud of how normal I sounded. "Hi, honey. Listen, my appointment ran long and the client meeting got pushed back. I might not be home until after dinner." Another lie, delivered with the casual confidence of someone who'd never been caught. In the background, I could hear music, something jazzy and intimate, not the sterile sounds of a medical office. "No problem," I told her. "I'll handle dinner with the kids. You're the best. Love you." The words hit me like a physical blow. Did she mean them? Had she ever meant them? Or were they just part of the performance, lines delivered to maintain the illusion? After work, I drove home through Atlanta traffic that seemed heavier than usual, as if the weight of my discoveries was affecting the very air around me. Tyler was already home, sprawled on the living room floor doing homework with the television providing background noise. "Where's your sister?" I asked. "Soccer practice. Mom said she'd pick her up, but she texted that you're doing it instead." Of course she had. Another convenient revision to avoid coming home too early. I picked up Emma at 6, listening to her chatter about her day, while my mind processed the growing list of Rebecca's deceptions. When we got home, Tyler was setting the table without being asked. Another small sign that the kids were sensing the tension, even if they couldn't name it. Over dinner, Emma mentioned that her friend's mom had asked about Rebecca's health. "I told her mom was getting better," Emma said, twirling spaghetti around her fork. But Mrs. Patterson seemed confused. She said she saw Mom at that new restaurant downtown last week, and she looked perfectly fine. Tyler looked up from his plate. "Which restaurant?" "The expensive one with the weird name." "Bacchanalia?" "Mom was with some man, Mrs. Patterson didn't recognize." The fork slipped from my hand, clattering against the plate. Both kids looked at me with concern. "Sorry," I said. "Just clumsy." But inside, something was crystallizing. Mrs. Patterson, Emma's friend's mother, had seen Rebecca with Coleman. The web of lies was starting to catch on the edges of our real life, the careful separation between Rebecca's two worlds beginning to fray. After dinner, as the kids settled into their evening routines, I found myself standing in our bedroom doorway, looking at the space Rebecca and I had shared for so many years. The jewelry box sat innocently on her dresser, hiding its expensive secrets. The bed where she'd lain beside me, spinning elaborate stories about medical appointments and treatment protocols. My phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. "Pickup location, 24-hour storage unit, 247 Northside Drive. Code 8847, time sensitive." I stared at the message, then at the bedroom that suddenly felt like a museum exhibit, a carefully curated display of a marriage that might have been an illusion all along. The kids were safe upstairs, lost in homework and video games. Rebecca wouldn't be home for hours, if her pattern held. And somewhere across town, a storage unit waited with answers I wasn't sure I was ready to find. But ready or not, I was already reaching for my car keys. The storage unit sat in a row of identical beige boxes, their metal doors reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights of the facility. Unit 247 opened with the code from the text message, revealing a small space containing a manila envelope and a laptop computer I didn't recognize. Inside the envelope were photographs, financial records, and a USB drive. The photos showed Rebecca and Richard Coleman at restaurants, hotels, and what appeared to be a cabin in the mountains. The financial records revealed a secret credit card in Rebecca's name, funded by withdrawals from our joint savings account money I'd assumed was going toward her medical treatments. But it was the laptop that provided the most devastating evidence. Someone had cloned Rebecca's computer, giving me access to months of deleted emails, text messages, and browser history. The conversation threads painted a picture of a woman who'd been planning her exit from our marriage for over a year, using the fake kidney disease as both cover for her affair and a way to elicit sympathy and support during her transition. One email exchange from 2 months ago made my hands shake. Richard. I think David's getting suspicious. He asked too many questions about my appointment yesterday. Maybe it's time to accelerate our timeline. Don't worry. Once you get the kidney donation story to its logical conclusion, you'll have grounds for divorce that make you look like the victim. Sick wife, devoted husband, but sometimes love isn't enough. The courts will be sympathetic. You're right. And with the money I've been moving into the offshore account, I'll have enough to start fresh with you in Charleston. David will never find it. I read the exchange 3 times before the full implications sank in. Rebecca hadn't just been having an affair, she'd been systematically looting our marriage, both emotionally and financially, while planning to frame me as the husband who couldn't handle his wife's illness. The kidney disease fiction was meant to end with her deciding that our marriage was too stressful during her health crisis, giving her grounds for a divorce that would paint her as the victim. The offshore account contained nearly $200,000 in money from our savings, her business accounts, and even the kids' college funds. She'd been preparing to disappear with Richard Coleman, leaving me with the mortgage, the children, and a carefully crafted narrative about how I'd failed her during her greatest time of need. 3 days later, I sat across from Rebecca at our kitchen table with printed copies of everything spread between us. She'd come home from another fake appointment to find me waiting with the evidence of her deception laid out like a legal brief. Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, denial, anger, and finally, something that might have been relief. The mask she'd worn for months finally slipped away, revealing a stranger I'd been living with without knowing it. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice steady. "Pieces for weeks, everything for 3 days." She nodded, studying the photographs of herself with Richard. "The private investigator was good. I never noticed anyone following me. I didn't hire them." That got her attention. "Then who?" "I don't know. Someone wanted me to find out what you were doing." Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, then laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Richard. It had to be Richard. He's been pushing me to leave you for months. Said he was tired of sneaking around." The betrayal within the betrayal. Even her lover had been manipulating her, using a private investigator to force the confrontation that would end her marriage and clear the way for their relationship. "The kidney disease was never real," I said. It wasn't a question. "No, I needed time to figure things out, and I needed cover for the time I was spending with Richard. It seemed like the perfect solution." "Perfect." I repeated the word, tasting its bitterness. "You let me research organ donation procedures. You watched me prepare to give you part of my body to save your life." For the first time, she looked genuinely ashamed. "I never meant for it to go that far. I was going to end it before any actual medical procedures. By divorcing me and taking half our assets, plus the money you'd already stolen." She didn't deny it. Couldn't deny it, with the financial records right there on the table. "What happens now?" she asked. I'd been thinking about that question for 3 days. The evidence was overwhelming: adultery, financial fraud, emotional manipulation. In Georgia, I could pursue criminal charges for the theft. I could destroy her reputation, her business, her relationship with the children. I could make her pay for every lie, every moment of calculated deception. But sitting there looking at the woman I'd once loved completely, I realized that revenge wouldn't repair the damage she'd done to our family. It wouldn't give Emma and Tyler their mother back, or restore the trust that had been shattered. It would only create more wreckage. "You're going to return every penny you stole," I said. "You're going to sign divorce papers that give me primary custody of the children and fair division of our legitimate assets. You're going to explain to Emma and Tyler that you've made choices that hurt our family without involving them in the details they don't need to know. And if I don't?" I gestured to the evidence spread across the table. "Then I file criminal charges for theft, present this evidence in divorce court, and let a judge decide what's fair. Your choice." Rebecca studied my face, perhaps looking for the man she'd manipulated so successfully for months. But that man was gone, replaced by someone who'd learned that trust, once broken completely, couldn't be repaired, only replaced with careful boundaries and clear consequences. "I'll need time to arrange things with Richard," she said. "You have 48 hours. After that, I file the papers with or without your cooperation." She nodded, gathering up the photographs with hands that shook slightly. "For what it's worth, David, I never meant to hurt you this badly." "But you did it anyway." "Yes, I did it anyway." 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of our house, my house now making pancakes for Emma and Tyler on a Saturday morning. Rebecca had moved to Charleston with Richard Coleman, visiting the children every other weekend, and maintaining the polite, distant relationship of people who'd once shared a life, but now shared only the responsibility of raising two remarkable kids. The divorce had been finalized without criminal charges, though Rebecca's reputation in Atlanta's interior design community hadn't survived the revelation of her deceptions. She'd started over in South Carolina, rebuilding both her career and her relationship with our children, who'd proven more resilient than either of us had expected. Emma flipped through college brochures at the kitchen table, her acceptance letters already arriving despite being only a junior. Tyler practiced piano in the living room, the melody drifting through the house like a promise that normal life could return, even after everything. "Dad," Emma said, looking up from a Georgetown University pamphlet, "do you ever regret not trying to work things out with Mom?" It was a question she'd asked in various forms over the months, testing whether the stability we'd found was real or just another temporary arrangement. "No," I said, flipping a pancake with more confidence than I'd felt about anything in years. "Some things can't be fixed, only learned from." "What did you learn?" I considered the question while Tyler's piano practice filled the silence. What had I learned from discovering that the woman I'd trusted completely had been living an elaborate lie? That my children were more perceptive than I'd given them credit for? That the private investigator who'd forced the confrontation had probably saved me years of additional deception? "I learned that people can change in ways you don't expect," I said finally. "And that when they do, you have to decide whether to change with them or hold on to who you are." Tyler's piano practice ended, and he wandered into the kitchen, drawn by the smell of pancakes and the sound of conversation. "Are we talking about Mom again?" he asked with the directness that 11-year-olds hadn't yet learned to soften. "A little," Emma said. "Dad was explaining why some things can't be fixed." Tyler considered this while I stacked pancakes on plates. "Like when you break something on purpose," he said. "It's different from when you break something by accident." Out of the mouths of babes. My son had articulated something I'd been struggling to understand for months. Rebecca hadn't stumbled into her deception or made a mistake that spiraled out of control. She'd systematically constructed an elaborate lie, maintained it for months, and used it to manipulate everyone around her. That kind of deliberate betrayal couldn't be repaired because it revealed something fundamental about her character, something that made future trust impossible. "That's exactly right," I told him. As we ate breakfast together, I realized that the mysterious private investigator had given me more than evidence of Rebecca's affair. They'd given me the truth, and the truth had set me free from a marriage that had become a carefully constructed lie. I never did find out who hired Blackwood Investigations or why they'd wanted me to discover Rebecca's deception. But in the end, it didn't matter. What mattered was that Emma and Tyler were learning to trust again, slowly rebuilding their relationship with their mother while maintaining the stability of our home. What mattered was that I'd discovered I could survive the complete destruction of everything I'd thought was real and build something better from the wreckage. Sometimes the most devastating betrayals lead to the most important discoveries about who you really are when everything else falls away. In my case, I discovered that I was stronger than I'd known, more resilient than I'd imagined, and capable of choosing truth over comfortable lies, even when the truth was painful. The house felt different now, not like a stage set, but like a real home where honest conversations happened and trust was rebuilt one day at a time. Rebecca's absence had left spaces that we'd filled with new traditions, deeper relationships, and the kind of authentic family life that can only exist when everyone involved is committed to truth. As I watched my children laugh over breakfast, I realized that sometimes the best thing you can do for the people you love is refuse to participate in lies, even when those lies seem easier than facing reality. The truth had cost me a marriage, but it had saved my family. And in the end, that was a trade worth making.